Episode 9, here we go.
Hello, Ian. Let's not waste any time. We know what the people want. What are the results from our Disney poll?
So funny you should ask that, Mark. So this whole podcasting adventure is a learning experience for us. So we had thought about this poll, doing the old Facebook way. So apparently Facebook doesn't let business pages do polls, right? Just group pages.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned makes no sense to us.
But
so basically,
you pivoted and
we pivoted hard. We had a workaround that involved a graphic and only one spelling typo.
I think two, actually.
And we got reactions. We got those reactions, right?
Yes.
So drum roll, please. Super close vote. We have Lion King over Beauty and the Beast by a single vote, followed by Aladdin.
So it should be. Yeah.
Right. So those are the three ones we highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, the good people of Facebook and beyond, they nailed this. They got it right. It might not be a super majority, but a win's a win. So we got Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and then a pretty steep drop off.
Nothing else.
So anyway,
at that point. So anyway,
that's the poll. So we want to thank everybody for helping out with that. That was awesome.
For the vote. Yeah. Thanks, Ian, for figuring out the workaround. We're definitely learning new things each week, but that's part of the fun. That's what we're doing here.
Yes.
So
yes, we are brand new to this and learning as we go for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
In other news, you have been experimenting with a new review series for the channel, right?
Yeah. So basically, I thought to myself, what else can we do to ramp this up? And I'm a big reader. I'm reading books already. I like talking about books, and I previously have written a bit, and I said, let's put it all together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's make a review series wherein I basically write some text and then do my best to do my Tom Brokaw NBC voice.
Yes.
And put something up there. So basically,
what was the book you did this week?
Light from Uncommon Stars. It was a strange book. I'm not going to tell you why it was strange. I want everyone to go online
listen to the review, right?
And to read the review. Anyway, I really enjoyed the process. I learned a ridiculous amount of things about how to post on YouTube, how to get content, all kinds of stuff. So that was really fun.
You get to practice that writing skill too, right? As well as your narration.
So basically, when you write something down and then you repeat it verbatim, it's really easy to find out. You see exactly where things did not go right. So I would record a bit and be like, oh crap, and I would type and then I would redo it. What's
the most number of recordings you've done for a single review series thus far? Like most attempts or most takes?
I probably did for a couple of these. I have 2 more in the pipeline, by the way. I maybe did 13 to 15 takes.
So
because I would get into it and then I'd be like, okay, this sentence is garbage. It makes no sense. So I basically pause / delete the recording.
The goal is to get that down to like 4, maybe.
Yeah. So, I guess 3 or 4 is the thing, because no matter how proud you are of the content, when you're repeating it 10 times, it's going to lose its luster, right?
Yeah, I guess the point is we're loving doing this weekly pod, and we want to learn different mediums, like you said, different contents, channels we're experimenting with. Yep. So look forward to more experimenting in the future.
And my last point on that is basically, I know not everyone out there is a reader. I'm going to be pivoting to do TV and movies and things like that. There are also reviewable, but maybe a little more accessible to the folks who are into that. So
anyway, you've kind of called me out to attempt the same. So it may not be the same voice, but or the same pace that you're going to pump out the content, but I owe you something as well. So
awesome. Look forward to hearing that, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's enough chit chat. Ian, can you share our 3 stories for the week?
Yeah, I'm really excited to share these stories. We have Major League Baseball's recent Hall of Fame vote. We have stock dividends.
Yes.
And then we have another crowd favorite. We have board games.
BOA.
Said that very awkwardly, but board games. Let's do it. I'm Ian.
And I'm Mark. And this is
Let's get into it.
They got red hair. They really don't care what they talk about. They just want to have a good time while talking online. Let's get into it.
So, first story. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. So by now, you guys realize that a few weeks back, we had a huge Hall of Fame vote. It's an annual winter event, which I really didn't know the time it took place.
Yeah,
it's sort of a January, end of the year kind of wrap up. So almost 400 ballots are cast by a variety of sports peoples. Also a bigger number than I thought. 400 is a huge number. This was a huge vote because this was the last year of eligibility for Mr. Barry Bonds and Mr. Roger Clemens, right? They did not reach the 3/4 rate required by voters, 75%. That is the magic metric by which you need to surpass
the C average, right?
Yeah. So what that means, guys, is that Barry Bonds, I think arguably, obviously we're going to get into this, but the best hitter in the game, MVP award winner 7 times. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any other major sport where an individual won 7 MVPs, right?
Absurd.
And then Clemens, which we'll get into as well, obviously a top 3 pitcher, I think. I'm not going to say he's the best pitcher of all time, at least, but obviously Roger Clemens is up there on the, the pantheon of pitchers. So basically we had a huge vote. We had 2 massive players' personalities not reach the threshold. Before we dive into our opinions, though, I want to give you guys some context here. So the actual verbiage of Cooperstown, right? This is the enshrinement institution.
Yeah, pay attention to these words very carefully.
Players are in the hall for their, quote, accomplishments in the game, and players should be evaluated in a way that addresses the totality of their careers. The mission of the entire institution is to simply preserve history, obviously baseball history. So this is ripe for a hot take, right? This is a huge story. So
Everyone
for me,
has one.
Yes, we have at least 2 for you guys. So for me, the Hall of Fame needs to take into account the total history of the sport, right? And unfortunately for Bonds and Clemens, that's going to be part of the PED, the performance enhancing, the doping. That's part of the history of the game. And for me, basically, unfortunately, there was an issue with performance enhancing drugs, but that was wrapped up in the total of the game. And for me, basically, Mark, I think they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I really do. What about you?
I'm leaning into that definition you read. Really, it's about preserving the history of the game.
Totality of the game.
Right. So I think we need to
warts and all
embrace the past, acknowledge things, and then move forward. Yes, they use PEDs. They were not the only ones, but they were the all-stars in the limelight, and they were the ones who got caught, right?
They were not the only ones that said so, but yes.
Every home run ball still went over the fence, regardless of whether or not
still clears the fence, right?
Was there juice behind it? Some of them, yeah, each strikeout crosses the plate. So those events still occurred. I think the players who get hurt are the ones who chose to stay clean.
Yeah.
And would have been top 3, 5, 10 players if they had taken the same PEDs as the other people. And now that's like giant speculation, because who knows what impact it would have on each individual and all the situations, right? But
right.
Would we be saying somebody else's name instead of Barry Bonds, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good point. I think that, I think Major League Baseball is being, I'm not sure if lazy is the right word, but they're basically choosing to kind of gloss over this, try to have these 2 players not make the Hall of Fame, kind of cast aside their history and move on. But I think how much better it would be for everybody if they would just own this issue, basically say, there was a 15, 20-year period in which the introduction of drugs into baseball reared its ugly head.
Oh, well, drugs, at least PEDs, because let's not pretending we're using amphetamines and cocaine and who knows what else.
Right. I mean, doing the story research, there was multiple instances of, in the 70s, people popping amphetamines, doing things to enhance their bodies, so on and so forth.
Right.
So basically, for me, baseball is just really trying to have it both ways. They want to celebrate the good things, and then they want to have these 2 individuals who basically are the scapegoat for, Bonds is the hitter, and then, Clemens is the pitcher. And then there's a number of players that fall underneath those 2 icons, hitters and pitchers, who basically, I think pretty much anybody who has that asterisk next to their name because of these 2 titans is they're probably not going to be included in the Hall of Fame. It's going to take longer, obviously, because they have 10 years of eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, every year Bonds and Clemens,
the poster
they went
child,
up,
right?
They went down, but they never eclipsed that threshold, right? So, I mean, And you can even look at Bud Selig, who's the commissioner during this important chapter of history. He's in the Hall of Fame. They were quick to put him in. I mean, what kind of ownership does he have? I mean, he's responsible, at least in some part, for the players that he's overseeing, right? And he's in.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and what's interesting too, I think, is the approach that MLB takes versus the other major sports league, hockey or football or NBA. Like,
yeah, I think it's
turn a blind eye. I don't know.
I mean, for me, it's possible to celebrate the player of Barry Bonds while bemoaning the choices he made, right? He has a number. He's the home run king, and there's the asterisks, and then there's this whole omission where they're just going to basically not talk about him. And I think if we're looking at what Cooperstown, which is the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, that's of all the major league sports.
And you said it's preserving history.
Preserving history. They really can't have this period of time where they just don't recognize the achievements of these guys. I think it's silly.
Put them in the Hall of Fame and put the asterisk next to their name and have it on display and talk about it, right?
Because maybe not us, but a version of us in the next 5, 6, 7 years is going to have the same discussion with Sosa, McGuire, A-Rod, other players who clearly, some under oath, admitted to PED use. It's just going to be this constant recycling of this narrative. So the Bonds and Clemens thing may be case closed, but I mean, this is not the end of this discussion.
So they may not be in Cooperstown, but for Let's Get Into It, they'd be in the Hall of Fame.
I think that their careers are Hall of Fame worthy, and I think that they should be included. I really do. Second topic. Let's do it.
On to finance. So we absolutely butchered, whatever you want, the NFT definition very badly.
It was a moment of
a few weeks ago, but
weeks ago.
It's part of the experience. So today we're talking about dividends, stock dividends and finance. And we're going to start with the definition per Investopedia. I have it written down here so I don't mess it up. A dividend is the distribution of corporate profits to eligible shareholders. Simple as that. Ian, what does that mean?
So basically that means is a dividend is the distribution of some of the company's earnings to its shareholders, those who own the stocks.
Yep.
So you get paid a small amount of money, usually quarterly, 4 times a year, per the amount of shares you hold of that company.
Yep.
So Coca-Cola, who is a dividend shareholder or dividend player, they paid 42 cents per share to shareholders. If you have 10 shares, that would be $4.20
in the mailbox.
You would receive that every quarter, basically. So that is essentially what the dividend payout is. Obviously, it's a little more complex than that, but that is the layman terms.
Yeah, and not all companies pay dividends. Typically, the newer ones, growth stocks, tech stocks, don't. They're usually older stocks because the idea is they're not able to grow the same way newer ones are. And so they reward their shareholders in the form of these dividend payments, these cash payments, since they're underlying the stock value may not appreciate as rapidly, right?
Exactly. That's really nice.
So good definitions. What do you think about them, Ian? Do you like them?
I really do. I do like these. I think this is an interesting little way to build your portfolio. I think the biggest take home message that I would give to Mark and obviously our listeners is the passive income generators. I mean, you're being paid to hold on to stocks.
That's the buzzword.
And you can take that money and you can use it for whatever you want, or you can roll those dividends back into buying more shares. Fractionally speaking, of course, I mean, $4 is not going to get you another share of Coca-Cola.
No,
but it will get you it will get you that 0.13% or 0.13, which will eventually, compounding interest, mean that your next dividend payment is larger as a result. And I think what's also important is a lot of these dividend companies, they're growth stocks over the long haul. So they're not stocks that double, triple overnight, but they're stocks that have nice, even projections where they grow and grow and grow. And so the idea is you hold these, you're rewarded for doing so. And I think also my last point is that these are products and services and understand, right? Yes. This is soda. This is sticky pads with 3M. This is medicine.
Walk around your house and look at the back of the package. It's going to be a dividend.
You look at the stuff around you, and a lot of those are from companies that pay dividends, oil and gas, railroads, trusted, time-honored, improved businesses.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, sorry. So for me, like I've done the other side of the coin. I've done the day trading, right? Last year I wanted to get on all the hot stuff, so I've owned GameStop and all these fun things, but it's not for me, Ian. My heart cannot take it. I mean,
Your poor little heart.
Oh my God, I sit there, Robinhood, looking at it. I figure I can put like $20 and the reward's so small that what's the point? That's how I feel about like a casino too. Or I have to put thousands of dollars in for a chance to make it rich. But then like the casino, I'm literally gambling. You might call it speculating politely, but it's gambling.
Same thing, right?
Not my strategy. It doesn't work for me. I like the aristocrats. You like the aristocrats because they've been along.
So what's an aristocrat? You want to define that? I
skipped to that. You're right. Dividend Aristocrats is kind of an unofficial title for companies who have paid a dividend for 25 plus years every quarter or annually or however much they do it consecutively. So nothing is ever sure in life. Nothing is sure in the stock market. But if something is sure, it's these dividend aristocrats, and there's even dividend kings who've done it for 50 plus years.
Right. I mean, I think
it's a solid company.
I think Johnson & Johnson was essentially founded the year Abraham Lincoln took the presidency.
Pretty close.
I mean, if you look at some of these companies, some of these companies are the 4 railroads that cross the entire country, right? There's no new railroads.
No, these are
super old, established companies, which for some people is, that's actually a con, right? Because
they want to get rich
they're
quick.
not Tesla and Nvidia.
They're not hot, they're not sexy.
No, these are basically a can of Coke. It's unchanged. It's the same Coke your grandfather drank.
Walmart, Caterpillar,
right? John Deere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to do a Warren Buffett quote, right? The Oracle of Omaha, right? Wisely said, "Our favorite holding period is forever." And that's how I feel about dividends, right? With Tesla, you might buy it because you want it to go up and people want to sell it and flip it. I don't want to sell these things. I want to own them forever. These are stocks my children will inherit, right? Because like you said, it's a railroad crossing America. Like these are the pillars of the US or even the global economy these days. Will a couple of them fail over time here and there? Sure. But if you have a diversified portfolio of these dividend payers, these dividend aristocrats, I mean, you've got a pretty sure monthly, quarterly passive income stream, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight, like you said, but it's going to happen.
Right. I mean, basically, so some of the cons would be it takes patience.
Yes.
It takes basically not looking at the numbers for a long period of time.
Like in January, we're down 6-10%. Everything is, but just don't look at it because you're not retiring today. Most people,
right? I mean, but these companies have basically they're really well established. I mean, these are companies like electric companies, railroad companies. They have a long history of outperforming the market.
Mm-hmm.
So these companies over the long term have been proven to be ones that give better returns. Obviously, like you said, not all of them hit all the time, but if you have the entire gamut of some of these companies, nothing is completely safe, obviously, but this is a time-tested way to invest in the market.
And for me, it's not even mathematical, it's psychological, like touching on what you're saying there. You can put your money in Coke and sleep at night because someone's buying Coca-Cola tomorrow. Right.
There is definitely comfort in the fact that these companies have spent decades and obviously for some centuries establishing clear, understandable products that make sense for you and for the consumer.
We should disclose Coke did not pay us to say their name 20 times. We just have because it's an easy example.
It's just the easy one, right?
Everyone knows Coke. So
no, we are receiving no special kickbacks.
Well, except for our quarterly dividend, right?
Right, except for this passive income thing, right?
Yeah.
They're paying us to hold on to their stock, not paying us to talk about it, but here we are doing just that. So
I think we've made our point. Any final thought?
Yeah, final thought is, look into these. I think that it's an important part of our portfolios, Mark and I, and we want to hear from you about if you think we're completely on point or if you have a different opinion. Let us know.
Just don't recommend bonds.
Right.
Sorry. Go ahead. What's our wild card story in board games?
Our wild card story is another really important one, I think, in terms of the culture around us. Board games, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this was actually your idea, Mark.
It was.
So I'm going to kind of pivot to you. Talk about board games. What's your favorite game?
I'm going to not respond to your question the way you asked it. I'm going to give you two answers, right? when I was a kid, I would say my favorite game was Stratego. Have you heard of it?
I have actually heard of it. I've actually played it
Okay.
a couple times recently. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody has. The premise is like you
I
have
don't
two
think so.
players facing each other and you want to capture the other opponent's flag with your military. You put up the pieces on the game board and each piece has a value, 1 through 9. You know the value of yours, they know theirs. If it's a higher ranking piece, like a 1 or a 2, you have less of them. The lower ranking ones, 8 or 9, you have a bunch of them, but then they have special moves, like they can disarm a bomb or they can scout ahead farther. Way in the weeds. The point is, I feel like it kind of speaks to like I like maps, so it kind of tickles that for me, and it's like some strategy ahead and planning. So Stratego was probably my answer as a kid. What about you?
Well, Sushico is a great game. I think the one thing I like about it, I mean, there's a lot of things I like about it, but you actually get to make your own map. You actually map your own pieces out.
Yeah.
So you have a flag and you have bombs and you have the pieces, but you're actually, every time you play, you're putting different in where you want to.
So it's like there's strategy and there's also the meta strategy based on how many games you've played against the same opponents, right?
And it's very tactile. You have little pieces with little parapets. It's a great game.
Yeah.
So for me, I really liked Battleship as a kid.
Also tactile.
Especially the one that had sound effects, do
you don't make
Battleship sunk. I just love hearing that. Boo. I also like Clue a lot.
Those are very different games.
After you play Clue enough, though, it kind of, there's only a certain amount of pieces, mustard and the library with the wrench. But anyway, I really liked it as a kid. I kind of had a couple different progressions as an adult. Before kids, I was kind of dabbling in the more high complexity games. I was sort of turned on by friends and colleagues who, recommended a game. I go out and get it, sort of add to my collection. I sort of pivoted a little bit now towards, I would call them middle of the road games. They're games that are moderate complexity, like Century Spice Road, Ticket to Ride, Takedo. Games that have enough going for them that you can think, but they're not overly complex. You can play with friends. I like games where there's a bit of table talk, a little bit of gamesmanship, and they're not pure luck, obviously. But they don't have the element where you have to be like scratching your head for 2 or 3 minutes between turns. Obviously, now that I'm moving into a phase where my kids can play games, I'm sort of looking at that catalog. Quirkle, Chick-a-Pig, Vegas Dice Tower, King's Domino. Yeah, some of them are just crazy, which appeals to kids. Some of Quirkle, the name sounds really interesting. It's actually not a hugely complex game, but it's got a great name, right?
Yes,
super marketable. And then for me, I can't talk about board games without talking about chess. I mean, it's a perennial winner. Started playing with my son, and I mean that is the ultimate OG game, right?
Magnus Carlsen would agree.
Yeah. What about you? You right now, what are you playing as an adult?
Not as much as I would like. I do like somewhat recently, maybe college or post-college, Settlers of Catan. I know people love it. Some hardcore board gamers think it's too simple, but I think they're being
it's getting some riff. It's getting
riff raff. Self-righteous or pompous. I don't mean that insultingly, but
right,
I think it's a good balance of a game. It's simple but also complex. I like how it has like the resource management, tokens, resources, but also you're building an empire. And so we keep talking about balance and complexity and simplicity. So
balance.
That's the question. What makes a good board game? What makes a great board game? Is there an easy answer?
I don't think there's an easy answer, but I think there are definitely, some variables and factors. I think balance is huge. You definitely want to feel like you're playing a game where you have an advantage if you use your skill, but there's some luck a little bit too, to keep things flowing.
For the randomness, right? The RNG.
Right. I mean, I think luck is better written as random. I think that's a good point. I mean, how hard is the game to learn? I think Catan is a great example of a game that 15, 20 minutes and maybe the first couple rounds.
You like play it once to learn it.
Get it, right? It's intuitive to a degree. The things that you want to happen generally are the kinds of things that will happen if you're lucky. Not overly complex. It's cooperative versus competitive is a big thing. I think there's a movement now towards the cooperative games, but I'm sort of, I guess, old school in that I do appreciate competitive games.
Yeah, I've only played a few co-op games.
Yeah, I think they're getting bigger, but replayability is big, obviously, too. I think you want a game that, I mean, if you're going to spend $50 on a game, you want to have the ability to play it with different people, different groups.
Can I say maybe 50? Some of these games come out, you can spend 100 or 150 bucks.
Yeah.
Days, which
yeah.
I think that's outrageous.
I think with the advent of more gaming companies getting involved, I think you sort of have your tiers where you can grab your Parker Brothers Candyland for $10-15 at Target.
Not a good
then
game.
Barnes & Noble has games with minifigs and all kinds of maps that fold out to be the size of a table. Yeah, $100, $120.
Yeah.
So, but I think what I want to go back to is this balance issue. I think good games just are well balanced.
Yes.
I mean, Catan, say what you want. It ushered in an entire genre of these resource management games. You know, it's the building block literally for probably thousands of games that have used that fundamental base. And they built off it, right? So, I mean, say what you want about it, but its legacy for a lot of people is going to be it's spawned all these different iterations down the line.
Definitely. So I guess the question is, have we reached the golden age of board games? Is it now? Is it in the future? Is it in the past? Was it chess and checkers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've moved past the chess and checkers and the Candylands. I think there's more interest and there's more money, right? There's bigger studios, there's bigger development companies that are putting their money behind making more games. I mean, I think there's also I think this is kind of something that I'm just mulling through my head right now is there's kind of a push to get back off the screen. You know, I'm not anti-video games per se, but just having a balance where you have, you know, a video game and you have the board game. So I think there's some recent growth that people are buying board games because they realize that playing games with people is fun. And maybe getting off the screen a little bit is something
funny.
That's attractive.
Is so many board games got kind of digitized. Maybe they get introduced to Catan, the digital version first, and they realize they can play it as a LAN party just with their friends at the kitchen table, right?
If you Google even like 15 games at random, you'll be surprised by how many have a digital sort of virtual component, right?
Yes.
I mean, and you don't have to do much looking past, you know, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. They have legitimate like aisles now with board games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't believe how many different options you have.
We like to get one or two for the kids each, like birthday / Christmas, even if they don't like it, just to try something and just like expose them to the idea. So
right. So basically for me, I mean, if we're not in a golden age, we're in a silver age, bronze age, we're in a really good place. I know that the people I think my cohort is kind of also into board games, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I do think culturally I feel strong saying that we're in an age where things are growing and building.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Do you think that's true?
I'm not going to answer it. Instead, I'm going to pivot and ask our audience to answer the question: what are your favorite board games, and are we in the golden age? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let us know if we're completely off base.
Yeah.
If we don't know.
Ian, want to recap the stories for us tonight?
Yeah, I'd love to. So if Cooperstown is about the history of baseball, it needs to be about the history of baseball. That includes this era of PED, and it includes Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. It can't arbitrarily pick and choose what portion of history it wants to show. Dividends are a solid way to achieve financial goals. This power of passive income, don't underestimate it. We realize it's hard though. It takes time and a good deal of investment, but check them out. Tons of resources. Lastly, we're arguing that board games are here to stay and we're in a golden age and cultural appeal is high. Tell us which ones are your must plays.
Wonderful. I thought it was a good mix tonight.
Awesome.
I just want to announce, if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see we are now on Google Podcasts. So we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts. If there's somewhere else you want to hear us, let us know. We'll try and get on there as well. Obviously, YouTube. Other than that, I guess I'm Mark.
I'm Ian.
And this
was Let's Get Into It.
Let's get into it.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The content in this podcast is not intended to be a research report, financial or life advice, and does not constitute an endorsement of any product, service, individual, or organization.